Okay, well, while everyone is joining, I'm going to go ahead and just get us started with some intro. Welcome to this Workforce Wednesday webinar. My name is Molly Cook, and I'm with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. I'm here to help with moderation and technology today. Today's topic is Accommodations and Universal Design, and we have some great panelists and speakers today to speak to us on that. As a reminder, all participants on this webinar are in listen-only mode and cannot unmute themselves. So if you have a question as the webinar proceeds, we encourage questions. Please go ahead and post those in the Q&A or chat box within Zoom, and we'll be sure to address those. This webinar is recorded, and the presentation, recording, and materials will be available on the Illinois Workforce Academy website and Illinois WorkNet within the next 48 hours. To be as accessible as possible, today's webinar has closed captioning and live transcription, so feel free to turn those on using your Zoom toolbar. Tomorrow, and also at the end of this session, you'll be receiving information regarding a survey about your experience today. It's very helpful if you provide us feedback and suggestions for ongoing improvements and professional development. And then finally, if you have a faulty internet connection or would prefer to call in at any time during this session today, you can do so by using the phone number in your original registration email. So with that, I'm going to start with a few introductory polls for the group. Our first poll is going to be, you'll see it launched on your screen, what is your local area? And then the next will be, which partner do you represent? So if we could take the next 25 or 30 seconds to go ahead and answer those, we can see who's all in this Zoom room today. I also said that there was a comment that there was some issues accessing chat. Chat is now enabled, so you should be able to type in the chat box as well if there were any issues with that. Okay, I am going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. All right, so as you can see, we have individuals here from all areas of the state, which is very exciting, and then across various titles and partners. So we're really excited for everyone to be here. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. And today, the facilitator is going to be Amy Julian. She is going to be walking us through some different questions and introduce us to our topic today. So in just a few minutes, I'll be turning it over to her. But first, I want to provide an introduction and some framing of why we're doing this webinar today. This webinar is hosted by the IWIB Career Pathways for Targeted Populations Disability Work Group. And this group, it meets monthly to identify and provide strategies and recommendations for eliminating barriers to ongoing employment for individuals with disabilities. So a few months ago, the group decided that it would be really helpful to do a webinar series to address hiring individuals with disabilities. And so we hosted a webinar April 19th on corporate culture. Today is our Accommodations and Universal Design session. And then the third session in this series will be hosted on July 25th, focused on individualized support. So we're excited for this session. And if you learn a lot today, we hope you join us again on July 25th. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you for the next several slides.
Thank you. So this is our agenda. We're going to start with an overview of universal design. We're going to look at panel questions. You're going to be able to see all that. And then we do encourage you to ask questions. So the chat has been enabled. And so if you have a question, please post that in the chat. Or if you'd like to, you can raise your hands and Molly and Sarah are on to address any questions or let us know so we can raise questions. And just to let everyone know that I cannot see everyone's faces. So Molly, if you need to get my attention, chat me or text me because I can't see you all right now. So not sure why Zoom's doing that today. Anyway, accommodations for Universal Design for Learning. Our presenters today are Lori Kittner, Associate Bureau Chief of Region 3, Customer and Community Field Service, Mark McCabe, the Director of AT Services at Illinois Assistive Technology Program, and then Martha Younger White is the Senior Vice President of Employment and Rehabilitation Services at Chicago Lighthouse. And I'm with you today. My name is Amy Julian. I'm the Director for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. So really quickly before we dive in, I'd like to know like a feel of the audience. So how well do you know UDL? Somewhat would be a 1, just post those in the chat. 2, so not at all would be 1. 2 is somewhat. 3 is I've had a training or 2, or 4, I could write a book on that. So go ahead and just throw those in the chat where you are. Quite a few 1s and 2s, excellent. Oh, 3. Okay, so we've got some that have not really heard about it at all. Others are more at the somewhat level, and then a couple of you have had a training or 2, so very exciting. So Universal Design for Learning really comes to us, it's been around since the mid-90s, and it comes to us from CAS, which is the Center for Articulated Technology. And we've got it in a couple laws. So those of you who have your CTE partners, if you talk about Universal Design for Learning, it is both in Perkins and the Higher Education Act. Universal Design for Learning is a term meaning a scientifically valid framework for guiding educational practices that provides flexibility in the ways information is presented, in the way students respond and demonstrate knowledge and skills, and in the way students engage. And again, as we talk about universal design, you're going to hear quite a bit around student focus. I do want you to be thinking that that also does reference your clients and customers. So how do they engage with your system, and how do they, what do we do to reduce barriers? And then Universal Design for Learning also reduces barriers in instruction, provides appropriate accommodations and supports and challenges. It also maintains that high achievement expectation. So what are we doing to reduce the barriers in the environment, but at the same time working towards helping the students, our clients and customers best achieve their goals? When we talk about Universal Design for Learning, when we talk about CAST and the way that's engaged with, we have really these 3 areas of the brain which we access: the affective network, the why of learning; the recognition network, the what of learning; and then the how of learning. So engagement, representation, and action and expression. And we're really looking at these 3 individually. And when we look at resources, you're going to have things around for the purpose to motivate learners. What is that engagement? What is that why? If anyone's ever engaged with, I don't know, 3 to 10-year-old, the question why gets asked a lot. So the affective network, the why, what is the motivation? Why are we here? What are we doing this for? That representation network is that idea of useful resources. What is the information you're going to be providing? What are we learning? Why is it important, but what are we learning? And then the final part there is the how, the action and expression. That's that strategic goal. That's really looking at that differential part. How are we going to go about it? We're going to look at multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression, not only in what we present as instructors, but also in what is there. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind is that when we talk about Universal Design for Learning, there also is that idea of that partnership with human-centered design. And a lot of you have probably heard about human-centered design as we've grown and as DOL has really embraced that. And human-centered design has those same fundamental principles of putting the human or the client or the customer at the center of what we do. We're going to move to our next slide now. And I want to show a video. So I'm going to just pop this over onto the screen. Are you able to see that well?
We see it in the, oh, we're starting to see it. We see it in the slide form, and now we're seeing your tab. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So this is a fantastic resource that I want to tell you about. It's ilequity.com, and we have a whole slew of resources on universal design. We're going to start with this one because it is pretty fun. Everybody hear that okay?
Universal Design for Learning, UDL, is an approach to improve and optimize teaching and learning for all learners by setting clear, rigorous goals, anticipating barriers, and proactively designing to minimize those barriers. You may know of universal design in architecture. It's an approach to design that works to ensure products and buildings can be used by anyone, regardless of their level of ability. When a building is designed for flexibility, it can serve everyone, with or without disabilities. Let's consider this universal design approach in learning. What difference would it make if educators looked for barriers in the design or in the curriculum rather than in the learners? What if we built flexibility into teaching and learning? Why should we look at our design and infuse UDL? Research shows the ways people learn are as unique as fingerprints. Variability in learning is the norm, so curriculum needs to be designed from the start to meet the diverse needs of each learner. When we design for the average learner, we miss reaching nearly everyone because no one is average, at least not in every area. When we design for variability, we are minimizing barriers and increasing access for all our learners. Variability is contextual. That means a learner may need the design to be different depending on topics, the environment, or the time or day of instruction. Every learner brings their own background, strengths, needs, and interests. To meet each learner effectively, the learner needs should be addressed through choices and access to provide authentic learning experiences. Designing for individuals in the margins helps everyone by providing support and challenges for all. We know from our friends at CAST, the Center for Applied Special Technology, pioneers in UDL, that universal design for learning equals learning for all. Remember, small changes make big impacts. What's one small change you can make?
So that's just one video in this series. Again, if you see something you like, I'll throw that in the chat later. But that is just a really great video series that we put together, really talking about what are multiple means of expression, what are multiple means of engagement, what is universal design, what is that idea of variability, and what does that mean? And having that, I mean, we've done complete trainings on this. So this is just a little glimpse into universal design, but if you are interested or anxious for more, please reach out because we have a lot of resources. This video series was put together in a partnership between SIPDC, which is the Southern Illinois Professional Development Center, and ICSPS, the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. So as they talked about core concepts of universal design, we see them in architecture quite a bit. And an example that I would have or that I'd give you is like if you're walking into the market and the doors open automatically for you, or if you get into your car and you adjust your seats. I'm doing a lot of that lately because I have a 6', 16-year-old, and I am not 6 foot by any stretch of the imagination. And so when he drives my car, my seat is way back. But universal design in architecture allows you to have those movable seats. We see it in neuroscience in the way in which we have instructors adapting their curriculum. And then we also see it in that idea of learning. So how do we engage with individuals? How do we help individuals better learn? And then how do we see it demonstrated in architecture? And engagement in practices, sustained effort, and engagement in optimizing relevance, value, and authenticity within our curriculum. So UDL core concept, one of the big things I'd like you to take away is that the barrier is in the environment, not the learner. So what can we do to address those barriers within the environment to allow all learners to have that level playing field? And that's really one of those fundamental components of human-centered design. What are the things within the barrier? What are those things that we're engaging within our environment that are barriers for our clients, customers, and students? And then UDL is not a checklist. So as we talk, if you take 100 UDL trainings, it's not something that you sit down and you check off your list. What it is it's things, it's a lens by which you look at everything, a lens by which you look at the world, look at the way things are accessible, things are not accessible, what are things that we can do to make individuals feel more welcomed in our environments. And then just a little bit of note there, variability is contextual, and you will have different levels of variability in different scenarios. And so you have, and this is from CAST, so you have the North that likes to take action and try new things. You have the East that likes to see that big picture. You have the South that likes to consider everyone's feelings before they make a decision. And then you have the West who really needs to know the who, the what, the why, and the where, and the how before they even decide to make a decision. And this is going to change, and who you are as you respond to things is going to change based on context. So you could potentially be a North when it comes to work stuff, but you are absolutely a West when it comes to, you know, parenting or how you engage with your social friends. So things of that nature. And just a little scenario here. You're planning a party and for your best friend. How do you handle that? So just a little engagement there.
Hey, Amy.
Yep.
I think that we're not following the slide portion. So we're seeing the slide that has the videos on it.
Oh, okay. Let me stop share and reshare. I apologize. I thought Zoom was following me. Hi guys, there you are. And let me share my screen again. I will take off the video clip, and then now I might be able to see you all still. Hey, I can see you still. Now are we seeing what I'm seeing?
Yeah, we see the scenario slide.
Perfect. Okay, so
Oh, you're on mute, and we lost the PowerPoint.
okay, are we back?
Yep, we hear ya.
Can you see the PowerPoint?
We cannot see the PowerPoint though.
That's fun. Okay. Are we cooking with oil now?
Looks great.
Okay. So in the chat, if you would please, sorry, I apologize for the technical issues. Believe it or not, I'm sitting in my office, hardwired into ISU's lovely internet. So tell me in the chat, if you're planning a party, are you a North person? Are you going to plunge in? Are you an East person? Are you going to be looking at that big picture? Are you a South person that you're going to consider everyone's feelings, or are you going to be a West person and pay attention to the details? And keep in mind that you can be a little bit of both. Got a lot of West coming in. I love Tara saying she's a South and West. Yes, you can be a little bit of both. Excellent. So again, the point there is that variability is contextual. So it is going to blend itself to the situation that you're in. And possibly if you are a South person when it comes to your work, when you're at home, you're like, no, I'm plunging in, I'm doing what I need to get done. So things I want you to keep in mind is the UDL core concept of variability is the norm. So when we're looking at that, variability is really something that is the norm. And then we're going to have the 3 layers of UDL guidelines. So if you haven't seen this, this is a fantastic UDL slide there for you. And moving forward, we have assistive technology programs. So I'm handing the floor over. Or Molly, are we moving to questions?
Nope, it's Mark's turn.
Okay, go ahead, Mark. Thank you.
All righty. Well, thanks everybody for you're going to listen to me for about the next 10 minutes or so. I was kind of going through the names on there. I recognize a few names, so it's always nice to know I have some friends in the audience. The Illinois Assistive Tech Program. We consider ourselves one of the best kept secrets in the state of Illinois. The Illinois Assistive Technology Program is a not-for-profit agency that promotes the availability of assistive technology, which we will define in a second, devices and services for people with disabilities. IATP serves all people with disabilities in the state of Illinois, their families, service providers, state agencies, private industry, educators, and other interested individuals, regardless of age or income. That's a lot. We do a lot of things, right? Let's define AT, first of all. So there's a lot of people on here. I don't know the backgrounds of everybody, but I think most people at least have a vague idea of what assistive technology includes. You know, the kind of official definition is any program, device, equipment that helps assist people with disabilities function in their environment, whether it's work, school, home, social, casual, any environment that individual's in. So you know what people do. One of the kind of generic cliche definitions that I like is that technology makes things simpler for people without disabilities as where it makes things possible for people with disabilities. And the reason I really like that, because I think that fits in so well to the universal design principle. And so much of what has been designed that we use every day, frankly, has been used by many people with disabilities for years, if not decades prior. And some of those programs and devices were actually developed. You know, necessity is the mother of invention. And then we thought, wow, this is great. Everybody can benefit. So, you know, when you're using your speech rack and your Siri or whatnot, think about some of the people that probably really need that to function, right? But as far as IATP, we're located in Springfield, Illinois. We welcome visitors. So no matter where you're at, please come down and visit. We recently moved. Our core programs, AT demonstration. We have a great demo floor. We have it divided into mock rooms. We have a kitchen, we have a bathroom, we have a sensory room, we have a low vision blind area. So basically anything you need, you can come into our demo center, and chances are we're going to have something exactly what you're looking for or very similar. Plus we're going to have people there that can help you. You know, one of the things that I really tried to pride myself on, and I've worked with many of you before, is that, you know, we can't always maybe provide the answer, but we probably know somebody who can. And we know many of you do the same, right? Like, hey, get a hold of IATP. The device loan program, in my opinion, may be the most vital component of what we do, for the simple fact that things are expensive, right? And so many of the customers I know that we work with are on fixed incomes. You know, money is an issue, and we do need to watch every penny, every dollar. And some of these things are so expensive, you know, whether it's an AAC device, which don't get me started on the cost of those things, or just a laptop with specific software. You know, some of the software might be $1,000, you know, a pop. And not too many people have that in their couch cushions, right? So with our program, it's a free loan. It's a 6-week loan, and it can go to anybody. The only division we have in our device loan program is we have ISB, which is the State Board of Education, and then we have our federal money. So federal can go to anybody. Anybody can go up. That's open to the general public. It can be for somebody. It can be for a family member, for a client. The ISB purchase devices do have to be for a student 3 through 22 in the state of Illinois, which we'll talk about those services a little bit as well. Our reuse program, I love. That's actually where I started at IATP. Way back in the day, I was driving an old Ford F-150, and I was going around to all the DRS offices and collecting a lot of their used equipment, you know, and a lot of it was actually still good. Some of it was junk. So we did some closet cleaning, but we did actually get a lot of devices, and we're able to get those refurbished and out to people. So it's pretty cool. But that program in general is just flourishing. So we can take donations, and that can be, we do a lot of bath chairs and grab bars and transfer benches and walkers and canes and you name it. We get these donations in, and then we get them out to folks. And that can be temporary. Actually, a lot of that reuse is for people, you know, maybe I had a surgery, you know, and I need one of the little knee scooters, or I need a wheelchair. But I only need it for 6 weeks to a couple months, and I really don't feel like going and buying a brand new one at Walgreens or your local med shop. We have Vono down here in Springfield. So that is a great program. The loans program actually is no longer there. So I kind of missed that on this slide. This is our standard template. We just discontinued that. This is where we actually provided loans for people who are in need of those expensive devices, usually vehicles and whatnot. And the problem was, frankly, is we just, we ended up with a lot of defaulted loans. If you know, that's better left to the banks. We gave it our college try, but we can still point customers in that direction. So the programs I really want to hit today are VR, the VOC rehab assessments that we do, and to some degree, the ISB evaluation services that we offer. You'll see on that list, we do offer a Makers Network, which is our new 3D printing program. We've hired some engineers. We have some new OTs on staff. And what we really want to do with this program, and this is where I encourage everybody on this call to start thinking about possible needs that you've seen with customers you've worked with, right? So that things can actually be designed to fit that customer. So we can do like 3D trinkets. We do, signature bars, and we've done key fobs and things like that, which are great. But we actually have some really high level 3D printers in our office. If you come down to see it, there's one that's, gosh, it's about the half size of my garage, I think, but this thing can do anything. So we want creative, out of the box, like, hey, here's somebody that's been trying to do, we have somebody, I worked with somebody who was born with one hand, and she's always wanted to play the guitar. And so getting that pick to fit some type of a sleeve, some kind of device, now we actually have the means. So we're kind of working on that on the side for Jessica. So just want to, we've got a lot of good creative people in the field here, come up with some stuff, and feel free to get a hold of us. Smart home technology, big one. This is open. It's primary to our VRR and HSP customers right now. And who doesn't use Alexa or Hey Google or Siri or any of these, do something for me with my voice? You can imagine what that can do for somebody in their home who's in a wheelchair or blind, or just maybe has some access issues. A good smart home setup can literally be the difference between somebody staying in their home and having to go to assisted living. And we've seen that already. We've only been running this program for about a year, and it's, I guess I'm somewhat biased, but it's been, I would say, borderline wildly successful. The response has been really positive. Tech kitchens, much in the same vein. Oh man, I already got the end. Let me talk real quick, Molly. The tech kitchen is kind of in the same vein as the smart home technology. I know I was going to start talking too much about different programs. I really want to talk about the voc rehab side though, real quick. Just give me 2 minutes. This is where we get referrals from DRS, Department of Rehab Services, counselors, for customers that they have. These are people that are trying to gain employment or maintain employment, right? And that could include school. So they can be in college looking to get a degree so that they can stay employed. And this falls right into that definition. So we go out and do evaluations. What tools is this individual going to need to keep their job or get that job? Now, this works in conjunction with a fast track program where we actually have equipment in our house, so to speak, and we can provide it to customers in real time. So we can do the evaluation. We submit a report to the counselor. Hey, customer needs X, Y, Z. Let's say it's Lori. I can use Lori. She's aware of this program. Lori says, looks great. I give you the go sign, and then we provide that equipment. We get a lot of input from people. This is always being streamlined. I could go into the breakdown of that, but I've kind of run out of time. I do want to mention our ISB services too. We do evaluation in much the same way for students. There we go. It's free to schools. It's AAC, so that's speech generating devices, and AT, 3 to 2 in the state of Illinois. 3 to 22, I'm sorry, in the state of Illinois. Our device loan program is crucial in this area because we want to try like AAC devices, for instance, before we put in for funding. AAC is funded by Medicaid and insurance, hopefully, as long as you write the reports correctly. And then we do provide training for schools as well. We do that on the VR side as much as we can as well. So here we are, the voc rehab. I kind of put the cart in front of the horse. I apologize. The voc rehab side this is the fast track program. We will do on-site employment evaluations sometimes. We'll work with companies. We've been to FedEx, we've been to Amazon. Sometimes that takes some doing. They're a little nervous to have us come in when they realize we're not there to harm, we're there to help. They've actually been really cooperative, and we actually at some places ask us back and say, hey, will you look at this or that on their own, which is kind of nice. So I've gone over my time, but hopefully in our Q&A, I really would like to kind of maybe explore some of those services more and answer any questions you have. That's our number on the screen, 701 North Walnut, Springfield. Please feel free to contact us at any time. Thanks so much.
Hey, I guess I'm next up. I'm Martha Younger White, and I'm with the Chicago Lighthouse here in Chicago. We're located at 1850 West Roosevelt Road, and we're open for any tour at any point that you want to come visit us. We're a longstanding nonprofit. We're over 117 years old, actually, now. And in 2014, we expanded our mission. The Chicago Lighthouse is now serving people who are blind, visually impaired, other disabilities, and veterans. So I know we're typically known for serving people who are blind or low vision, but we now serve other disabilities and veterans. So just wanted to share that with you. In terms of the populations and the programs that we serve, currently we serve over 50,000 persons through 38 different programs, and many of our programs cover what we think our community could benefit from in terms of education, employment. We have a low vision rehabilitation program, assistive technology, independent living, and we even have a social enterprise, which is interesting because that helps to fund some of our programs. Next slide. What I wanted to share with you today is actually something that I've spent my career reporting, and maybe one day won't have to report it, but that basically the unemployment rate right now in the blind community is greater than 70%. And that's something that I think we all are here trying to tackle. In fact, even in 2016, there was a study done by the Perkins School for the Blind that found that only 28% of the respondents thought that persons who were blind could perform their job, and only 32% thought their workplace could accommodate such an employee. So, you know, I think we all know that we have a lot of work to do to inform employers and many of those that we're working with in terms of the talents and abilities of our candidates. I think, you know, similar to how we started this session talking about the purpose of this group is how do we address some of those barriers? And I think a lot of it has to do with assumptions and biases of those who may not have worked with persons with disabilities. So I think we spend a lot of time talking to employers about, you know, how to get past that. Another thing that we spend time talking about is the accessibility of information through technology. I think we all know that many employers now are going to websites for their recruitment processes, and many of these are not accessible for many of our persons who are blind or low vision because they're basically not set up to work with that technology. And then even as they get onto the job, how are those employee systems accessible to them, either through the use of technology or other means, say the use of Braille or large print. And then some of the other barriers that we work with, common with the population we serve, is the wayfinding and navigating. So you imagine that you're coming to the workplace and obviously needing to get in that front door, but also finding your way through that facility. How are employers taking time to orient a new employee to some of those areas that they'll be interacting with? Next slide. So one of the things I think many of us are aware of, and I just share it just because I think there are a lot of myths when we're working with employment. And one is that providing accommodations for workers with disabilities is expensive. And we know that that's a myth. Basically, there is a law, Americans with Disabilities Act, that talks about a reasonable accommodation is any modification or adjustment to the job or work environment that will allow a qualified applicant or employee with a disability to participate in either the application process or perform the essential job functions. most workers with disabilities require no accommodations. And basically, according to the Job Accommodation Network, 56% of the employers reported that job accommodations cost absolutely nothing to make, and others typically cost $500 or less. So when we hear employers talk about making an accommodation and what might that cost them, I think, you know, proof is in the pudding. You know, the survey of employers has actually found that the average cost is $500 or less, or nothing. Next slide. So what do we do as the Chicago Lighthouse? Well, we are a community rehabilitation provider of the Division of Rehabilitation Services. So we do have certified rehabilitation counselors who meet one-on-one with clients to meet their needs and goals. We assist them in finding competitive integrated employment. So we always have job candidates that are ready to work. And then we also work with them on enhancing their employability. Many of them, for example, today we're actually doing mock job interviews with our employer partner so that our candidates can get ready for those job interviews and be on their P's and Q's for that job opportunity. And then we also educate employers about the benefits of hiring people with disabilities. I think we all know what a qualified individual with a disability can bring to a team. And we try to reinforce that with our employers. We also here at the Chicago Lighthouse have clinical services. And so just to make you aware, we have optometric, psychological support, assistive technology, and occupational therapy. So depending on what that person needs, we have a cross-discipline that can assess and treat them. In fact, we have 5 locations that offer low vision services and 2 stores, and we serve over 4,000 patients each year. So our collaboration is between our clinic and our assistive technology store, and we actually work from that customer's life goals to integrate those services. Next slide. So I think you heard from Mark about the definition of assistive technology. So I won't go into this slide necessarily, but I think you heard from him that there are things that we're using in our lives that make it useful. For example, Control Plus on the computer can bring various accessibility features to you, but also a built-in magnifier on a smartphone. So those are things that are just there in those products that people can use. But then there's a subcategory which may be designed specifically for a person with a disability. So for example, if you visited our store here in Chicago, we would acquaint you with some of those devices like the OrCam or the Iris Vision that can actually do specific features for a person with a disability. Next slide. Sorry, having difficulty. So what I wanted to share with you is here in Chicago, we do have our Tools for Living store where you can actually come and visit with one of your clients or send your clients here. And one of our assistive technology specialists will research the technology for them and actually try to identify what best meets their needs, such as the OrCam. And this could be for either on their job, off the job. We have actually, just like Mark said, a store that gives you some of those features of some of those products that they can try out. Next slide. We'll talk a little more about this in the Q&A, but there are some considerations that we do with each evaluation in terms of working with that person. You know, what is their adjustment to their loss? What are their expectations? What are their support systems? Are there any visual requirements or goals that we need to meet? And what's their overall health? I think that's the benefit that we have in terms of having both a clinic and an assistive tech unit, because they can actually work together to talk about what some of those clinical needs are that translate into their daily lives. Next slide. And we do use a framework when we evaluate them. So this graphic at the bottom of the slide gives you where we start from. We actually start with the student, looking at what their environment is around them, what tasks are they trying to complete, and then we go through figuring out what kind of tools help them do that. I see I'm getting the hand. So why don't we move to the last slide, and I can come back to this in the Q&A. Yeah, the last slide, which talks more about resources and as well as my contact information. Yes, here I've given you some resources, which include DRS, their website, but also the Chicago Lighthouse, how you can find us, as well as the Job Accommodation Network. I find that you can type in any disability and they'll give you a whole list of accommodations, as well as the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is the federal civil rights law. And last slide is my contact information. So certainly feel free to contact the Chicago Lighthouse. We're here to be a resource to you. And thank you so much.
Next up is Lori.
Good morning. I'm Lori Kittner. I am Assistant Bureau Chief for Illinois Department of Human Services, Division of Rehabilitation Services in Region 3, which is in Central Illinois. But my background is also in the northern part of the state, so I'm getting to know lots of folks all over the place. I wanted to start by just telling you a little bit about DRS and the many things that we do besides employment and training services, because we provide assistive technologies and various services through all of our programming. So our services encompass our home services program, which assists people in the home to ensure that they do not have to be placed in a nursing home. That includes assistance with activities of daily living, personal care. We can do Meals on Wheels or home delivered meals, whatever that looks like in your community in Illinois. And we can also provide an emergency alert system for those folks. So lots of things that can be provided there, along with the assistive technology and home modifications that might be needed to keep someone in the home and become more independent. And those home modifications are often, we do evaluations through IATP for those as well. DRS has a number of schools, as you can see here listed. We have Illinois School for the Visually Impaired and Illinois School for the Deaf, which are both located in Jacksonville, Illinois. They provide, I guess you'd kind of think of it as a boarding school type of environment for students, school-age kids from elementary school through high school, transition age services. They also do some consultation for parents and families who are of young children, 0 to 5, I guess, for evaluation and consultation. And then we have 2 schools in Chicago, Icree Roosevelt and Icree Wood, located in the medical district in Chicago. Icree Roosevelt provides transition and employment services for students who are age 18 to 22, helping learn to navigate public transportation, gain job skills, social skills, independent living skills, that type of thing. And then Icree Wood does the same thing for blind and low vision students, as well as adults and that have low vision or are blind. So they teach orientation and mobility. They have an apartment where they can learn to cook, perform various activities in their home, and that type of thing. So those are very robust programs throughout the state that we serve people with various disabilities in those locations. DRS also has disability determination services, which is when we have folks that apply for Social Security due to a disability, they perform that activity for us here in Illinois, determining whether they are eligible for those services. Next slide. As a WIOA partner, we are obligated under Title IV, Division of Rehabilitation Services serves exclusively individuals with disabilities. So their main barrier to employment is a disability of some kind. And that can be anything that falls under the ADA, from mental health issues to physical disabilities, sensory disabilities, just about anything. We do have offices throughout the state, large, small, covering a large territory, small territory. And here is our website, which we'll also show at the end. Next slide. Under our vocational rehabilitation program, or VR, we do assist people with finding competitive integrated employment. This means that we're looking for jobs for folks that are alongside non-disabled peers working the same type of job, and not in what I would consider a group employment or enclave where we have, a group of disabled people with a non-disabled supervisor. That's really not what we're talking about. We're talking about folks who are doing the same job at the same wage as non-disabled individuals. Competitive wages, again, at least minimum wage, making the same pay as non-disabled peers. And DRS helps with anything and everything that goes along with employment. So I've listed a bunch of things here. It all really hinges upon what the job goal is that the individual and the DRS counselor work together to determine. And then we alongside with that, we provide long and short-term supports in the workplace, including assistance with training and education, job coaching, which might be where we provide someone who comes in and assists with training, funding for such, and then assistive technologies. We would provide evaluation and the funding for those assistive technologies. Next slide. Assistive technologies and accommodations, as you've heard from our previous presenters, can be many, many types of things and functions. In my own mind, I like to think of assistive technologies as things that are purchased or homemade, used by all or just one employee to assist someone to perform the essential functions of the job. So that can be as simple as got a bunch of examples here. An amplified phone or headset, if the person is required to talk on the phone and might be deaf or might be hard of hearing, could be magnifiers, could be accessible keyboard, different shaped keyboards. We have people who maybe can't move their hands or arms as well as others, so they need a specialized keyboard. It might be software, speech to text, text to speech for folks who not only are blind and have low vision, but who might have learning disabilities such that they have a difficult time reading or writing. So that might be software that like Dragon Naturally Speaking that speaks out loud. And a lot of these things are, as Mark pointed out, also available on your smartphone. So a lot of times it's at no cost or low cost to the employer or the individual. We've also been doing a lot of standing desks lately. So special chairs for ergonomic ease, desks that are hydraulic and go up and down for folks so that they can move around. And then also assistive or accommodations might include being allowed to use their phone for alerts, such as time to move on to the next task, using their phone for training. We have, you might make a training video for someone, just a homegrown video where you film yourself performing a task and walking through a task, and then allow the employee to utilize that during their day. Might be something as low tech as a whiteboard or a visual schedule or calendar that can be used by everyone. So we're not necessarily pointing out the individual with a disability, but they have a whiteboard in the break room or in their area that just shows what their schedule for the day is. And then I always, like to point out that for almost all of us, a list or a sticky note is a big help. For our folks with learning disabilities and other intellectual disabilities, it could be just as simple as a list of tasks or sticky notes to remind someone that it's time to move on, or these are the things that you're doing for the day. Next slide. And then I think the biggest thing that we need to talk about today is, how does VR do this? What is the process? Generally, the customer would do a referral on our website or be referred from any of our WIOA partners. So we get a lot of referrals from IDES. We also get referrals from employers, schools, family members who say, this individual has a disability, they need help finding a job. Or like if it's coming from IDES, it might be, I have this consumer that I'm working with and I think they have a disability, or they have a disability, it's very obvious, and not sure where to point them for the appropriate accommodations and technologies. So they would make a referral to us as a partner agency. And we would help identify the accommodation or technology that's needed. That can happen before job placement, ideally, or it can happen after job placement, in which case we might be doing a job retention case so that they don't lose that job. And if we're unsure about what is needed, we do always, many times, refer to IATP, Mark's agency, to assist with that evaluation, to make sure that we're hitting all of the areas that the person might need. A lot of times, however, our rehab counselors can assist with making recommendations and trying different things that we might have at the office, or tips and tricks that we've used throughout the years. And we may not even need that assistive technology evaluation, the formal one. So the most important thing, I think, is making that call to DRS and just getting that consultation initially. After the evaluation, if IATP makes the evaluation, they will give us a summary report and make recommendations as to what is needed. What we should be looking to purchase or put in place for the employer and the employee. And then we write that into our plan to make sure that it gets done. Next slide. Accommodations or services that we can provide directly to employers would be identifying accommodations that might benefit all employees, like that, visual calendar or schedule, and just things that might be put in place for whole office or whole employer use. And as well as a bunch of different kind of educational things. And Molly, I see your little note there. We have consultations available with both our business services team and with our counselors and supervisors, where we might be able to consult with employers on what is needed, as well as disability awareness, and what type of assistive technologies might be available. We do work with a lot of community service providers like Chicago Lighthouse and other agencies who specialize in specific disabilities or general disability service providers that can also provide those type of consultations. We also work with other agencies throughout the state and the nation in providing vocational rehab services and and looking in accommodations. And by that I mean that we have connections with other states. They might do things in a little bit different way, but we can usually point someone in the right direction if they're looking elsewhere. Next slide and last here. This is again, a link to our website. And when you get to that IDHS website, you're going to select the office locator and look for Division of Rehabilitation Services, help getting a job for our VR program, or assistance in the home for the home services program. Thanks again for letting me be a part of the presentation today. It's been great so far, and I'm looking forward to working or hearing all the Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you so much to all three of our panelists. I do want to pause now, and Molly, if you could let us know if we have any questions in the chat, or if anyone has their hand raised virtually and has any questions before we jump into some prepared questions that we have.
Yeah, so it looks like, so one question was asked regarding referrals, and I know that Lori went through that. There was another question in the chat that was asking, and I believe this was during Martha's presentation, about services available for individuals who are already fully employed but could use some assistance. The individual in the chat noted that they are blind and they're working, but they would want to be able to access services. So I wanted to see if there was further elaboration on that question.
Well, great. Thank you for the question, Monique. Yes, we do work with individuals who are currently employed in terms of identifying what might be helpful to them in that work setting. So yes, please give us a call. Like I said, I'm the Senior Vice President of Employment and Rehabilitation, so I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have about your particular circumstances. But just to let everyone know, like Gloria indicated, we are a community rehabilitation provider with the Division of Rehabilitation Services. So in many ways, we will try to identify ways in which the vocational rehabilitation program could be helpful to you. Possibly under job retention, there might be an opportunity for us to get a case open with the Division of Rehabilitation Services. But even if that isn't a source, fortunately, like I said, we're a social business enterprise, so we do have other funding sources that we can pull on for those opportunities. So I will put my contact information in the chat, and certainly feel free to reach out.
Yeah, thanks. And just with that being said, DRS, usually we have two programs for after you're employed. First one is our post-employment program. So if we have placed you in a job within the last year, we would follow up and provide those services to make adjustments and look at assistive technologies and accommodations that you might need in the job that you were not aware of when you first started the job. Then we would also look at, if you were not hired through DRS, and got the job on your own, we would do that through a job retention case. And that's, you would make a referral. I would recommend calling your local DRS office use that office locator and call the nearest office and ask them about job retention, because those are usually very time sensitive cases. We might get a call, oh my gosh, they're going to fire me next week. I'm going to be let go if I don't, improve in these areas. So we would want to move on that pretty quickly, especially if there's a risk of losing a job. And we would also hook you in with the appropriate services for whatever disability it is. So if it's low vision or blindness, we would refer to our blind services. Customer and Community Blind Services is the new name for our BBS, formerly BBS, Bureau of Blind Services. We've had a little restructuring in the past year. And they are quickly hiring, as quickly as we can, additional counselors, orientation and mobility, and low vision instructors to assist with our caseloads throughout the state. So, and
just to piggyback on that, and I think, gosh, I saw Deb Scott was on here, and Laura, and obviously Lori. And frequently, that's where a counselor would, if they were making that referral to us, hey, this customer's job is kind of on the line, and we're going to jump on that as quickly as possible.
Right. Right.
And we can't always provide equipment depending on the qualifiers, but we can at least evaluate and determine what is needed. And then hopefully the employer is going to step up and do the right thing.
Right, exactly. And, depending on what they are required to do under the ADA, the employer may be obligated to purchase the equipment, but at least we can get the evaluation done and make recommendations for that, and point them in the right direction. Right. So it may not be DRS or IATP that's ultimately providing the items, but we can make an educated recommendation and refer them to the vendor that they need to utilize for those.
Well, and I would just add, here in Chicago, we do have the Tools for Living store where we can try out different items for you as well. I know, IATP is in Springfield, but, up north, if you have that need, certainly we have equipment also that we can try out with you.
I frequently, our Chicago folks, I'm like, yep, did you talk to the Lighthouse? Get hold of the Lighthouse. Yeah. So no. And that's what's great is that we're, all the entities involved, we're all pulling on the road in the same direction. This isn't, hey, I want to be the solution for you guys. No, we want to make sure that customer gets what they need.
It's not pie, right? I mean, it's not gone. There's, we share that forth all the time. So
yeah, I wish there was more people to share the pie with, to be honest with you. That's I think that's what we need, but yeah.
Okay, I'm looking through the chat. It looks like we've gotten the questions. I'm just double checking answered. We did get a question about the slides, and these slides will all be available on the Illinois Workforce Academy website within the next 48 hours. So you don't, this will not be the first time you can access this information. It'll be available again. So I think we're good to start going into the panel questions, Amy.
So our first question for the panel is, how is human-centered design, universal design, seen manifested in the workforce development field? And we can just go Lori, Mark, Martha.
Sure. I think, as far as universal design, we work together so well with our partners in the workforce development field. We look at and try and share any ideas that we have that might be beneficial to a whole office or a whole workplace and not just an individual with a disability, because, that's anything that we can develop for people with disabilities that's not just a personal item is what I would consider universal design. So, your example of the automatic doors at the grocery store, things like that, having a railing on the ramp, and as far as architectural design, that benefits everyone. That's what I see as universal design. And in the workforce development field, that just means sharing information back and forth. So any kind of cross training or information sharing that we can do will benefit everyone.
Was I second? I lost the order already.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and go if I wasn't, but yeah. So yeah, everything Lori just said, ditto. I would say when I hear this, the phrase building capacity is part of design, to be honest with you, making sure that there's people in an environment. And then employing tools. I'm trying to think of a good example. I'll give you one with a school. So there's a lot of text-to-speech programs out there, right? And first of all, like Lori said, discerning between what's appropriate and what's not. And when we need solid text-to-speech across all formats, we're going to need an extension. The built-ins aren't probably going to work, right? So rather than doing one-offs for each student who needs it, why not employ it district-wide? That actually happened. This is kind of a cool story. When everybody moved to Chromebooks, we kind of panicked. You can't put any software on a Chromebook, and it was all AT was software at that point. So they employed the Chromebooks. There wasn't a lot of extensions out there, but Read and Write for Google was the only one available at the time. And it's a great text-to-speech literacy suite, highly recommended, although there's others that are great as well. But I saw a student here in my home district, actually, or my hometown, and recommended it. He learned it. He did great. It was a great story. Jack was an amazing young man. In fact, he just graduated and was going to college and all that other good stuff. But what was interesting is my daughter came home one day, and she's a type A high achiever, loves school, like did projects for fun, opposite of me. And she was telling me about her day, and I'm kind of half listening, how we come in. And she's like, yeah, there's this cool tool where I can look up any word on the website and it'll read the definition to me. And then I can create a vocabulary list. And I'm listening, I'm like, that's Read and Write. And they employed it district-wide. So this was a student who didn't need, my daughter doesn't have a print disability, but these features were helping her.
We're going to look at the environment, that person in the environment, what tasks they're going to complete, and then what tools we can make available. What I see as universal design is looking more at that environment and maybe assessing how can that be an inclusive environment for people with disabilities, so that I don't have to always make that accommodation request. So it's kind of anticipating what might be some of those needs of those individuals. And I think, we've got some history here based on what we've done in the workplace, like, a curb ramp not only helps a person with a disability, but it helps, for example, a pregnant woman pushing the baby cart. There are ways in which other communities benefit from that kind of environment that we can create in our workplaces to let people know that we're expecting to include people with disabilities. We're not setting it up in a way that creates a barrier. I used to do worksite evaluations for the state of Illinois. I actually used to work for DHS, and we used to go into work sites, and it just amazed me how many times they would put, say, the garbage can, right where someone either needed to access the door and pull the door open independently. It was like, that to me was so easy. You could just move the garbage can to be out of the way of those individuals. And certainly that didn't cost you anything either. But it's that forward thinking of looking at the barriers in that environment and suggesting maybe there's a different way of doing this on behalf of everyone, not just people with disabilities. So I think that's the other beauty, I think, of the vocational rehabilitation model, is that it actually does put the person at the center. And we actually create a whole employment plan that includes, what are the needs of that person to gain employment. And so I think that's how employers benefit from working with the vocational rehabilitation system, because that's already built into the system to look at that individual and what they need and bring that to them so that they can be successful in that work setting. So that's all I'll share on that issue, but thank you.
That is excellent, Martha. Thank you for sharing that. And I do think that's important that as we're talking about human-centered approaches and we're talking about universal design, that these are things that have been around for quite some time. And there are also ways in which we do engage with the system. And for those of you who are not in the Title IV, reach out to your partners in Title IV. They are a great resource to help you better support your clients, customers, and students. So our next one, you've kind of gotten to a little bit, but I want to ask this question. Can you share a story or example of how you have collaborated with an employer to create a solution to make someone successful, or how have you worked to make the whole system successful? And we'll go reverse order this time. We'll go Martha, Mark, you're still in the middle, and then Lori.
Okay, thank you. And unfortunately, my slide is back. I apologize. But I actually did bring...
following along. There we go.
Keep going. There, stop there. One more. Okay. I really wanted to bring to you this example of how we worked with an employer, particularly for screen reading and magnification software, because that's actually an excellent accommodation for individuals with visual impairments. But often our problem is that these assistive technologies don't interact with an employer's electronic information system. So it's important that when employers are building these systems, that they actually think about these assistive technologies in the development of that. And I want to give you a case example on the next slide. I think I mentioned to you that the Chicago Lighthouse has social business enterprise. And we actually have a customer care call center that we operate on behalf of the University of Illinois Health System. So when you're calling to make an appointment for that system, you're actually talking to a Chicago Lighthouse employee. And we, as our goal, hire people with disabilities into those positions. Right now, we have about 30% of that workforce that has a disability. And many of them are either people who are blind or low vision, using what we call JAWS, which is screenware reading software, or Zoom Text, which is the magnification software. And unfortunately, in that job, when we would hire the person that was using the screen reading software, when they had a medical scheduling appointment that they got, they would have to hand it off to a sighted employee because the system was not compatible with JAWS. And actually, what happened in recognition of this, UI Health approached us and said, can we work with Epic, which is one of the major comprehensive record software companies that's selling the platform to many healthcare providers. Can we work with them to actually make this system accessible? And so we brought together our team of digital accessibility experience team, and we actually tested that whole platform to then make recommendations to them, working side by side on how we could make that accessible to screen readers. And actually our lead analyst for that said, our lives depend on how well things are coded. So it's very important in the development of these platforms that many employers are using, that they actually think about how those are coded for the use of these assistive technologies. So I just wanted to share that with you, because now we're able to hire people who are totally blind into these jobs, and they're able to do the full job of the medical scheduling that allows them to gain employment, but also to work with an employer and actually demonstrate the capabilities of people who are performing these jobs. So I think that, to me, is the best case example of how employers can work to better their systems.
Excellent. Let me get back to the question here. So same question to you, Mark.
I love the example that Martha just gave. And she knows that's a fight. The whole we have an ICT trainer actually as well, and getting people to create things accessibly. If they would just start, it's so much easier to start building accessibly than go back and remediate it. That's a nightmare. That's where you need experts like the one Martha was talking about, which I am not, quite frankly. So yeah, amen to that. Actually, mine was going to be similar, but I actually have another one. And this was actually with FedEx, and I feel comfortable saying that name because it's a good story. So I'm not throwing them under the bus. So it's a good pup for them. Otherwise, I'd say a prominent mail carrier or something. You know what I mean? I give you some kind of, telling it without saying it. But so this was a individual had been with FedEx for 25 years, been there a long time, but slowly was losing his vision. He's maybe 5 years out from retirement, something around there. But his vision got to a point where it was almost unusable. I mean, he's not at a screen reading blind product point, but he's kind of getting there. And this was a guy working on assembly line. So he couldn't get to the bathroom. He couldn't get to, my big thing was, what happens if there's a fire? I don't know. I hope somebody gets me, he said. So that, health and safety obviously has to be prominent. I mean, he couldn't, his whole thing was they wanted him to go to these meetings once a week or something, but he couldn't navigate there by himself. So obviously that's a big problem, right? They were reluctant because I think that they thought we would probably come in and start drilling into their concrete floor. Now, on the surface, we thought about doing, truncated dome, something like that. We've got to have some markers in here. What it really was, and this came down to then having the proper measurements of his visual acuity and whatnot, he needed high contrast colors for landmark. That's really all he needed. And so it was a matter of getting some labels and really a lot of high contrast tape at various places around. And so we did multiple colors for the need. So the emergency exit was the first and foremost, the issue we marked. But having the company, first of all, I was really glad that was a very easy, cheap fix. And it opened up, he now can go to these meetings. He can actually now, we figured out, they had him stationed in this one spot, even though he was capable of doing more. And this guy is amazing. He can do these fine motor tasks and boxing and taping and entering and sorting. Yeah, it was fun to watch. The guy's really good at what he does because he'd done it for a long time, even without being able to see very well. He actually improved his position at work because they realized, oh, well, if you can travel now, because they kind of just locked him into a spot, like you're comfortable here, right? All right, we're just going to keep you here. Oh, no, you can go over here. You can go over here. And now he can travel because with tape, essentially color tape, a couple floor landmarks and stuff we did put in, but it was a really simple, fairly cheap. And I'm not saying that, I don't promise anybody anything, but yeah, we're not going to just throw money and tech at things. Sometimes simple, easy solutions. I love when Lori was giving the example. Yeah, it's not always high tech. Most people think technology, computers, AAC, eye gaze, things like that. And I would say, probably for what we do with VR, that usually is the case, but AT in general, no, probably less than half. When you look at our reuse programs and things like that. So, yeah, I've got plenty of examples. I love talking about customers and the things that it can do, and those light bulb moments for employers. They're like, oh, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of myths, and I like the myth that I think was in one of your slides, that it's going to be expensive, that we got to redo the foundation or something. And that being said, occasionally maybe it is necessary, but to me, that's worth it. It's always an investment in a person, right? So.
Excellent, thank you. And Lori, same question.
Thanks. I'm going to go right along with the low tech solution here. Most of my days as a VR counselor were spent in a working with step and transition students. So students who were, a lot of them 18 to 22 years old, getting their first job, that type of thing. And one of my favorite students of all times, he was a fantastic kid, was one that got his first job with Sodexo, which is a food service company that does school food service. So he was working for Sodexo. He had done some stocking in the past, in work-based learning experiences. So he knew how to stack. He knew how to deliver things, and he was hired to put together and deliver school breakfasts. So it was a breakfast program at a low-income district. And what his job was to, get all of the right number of breakfasts in the bin and deliver it to the classroom. And he had a cart that would accommodate probably 4 bins at a time. So he would fill the bin with the number of breakfasts, bring it to the classroom, and then come back and restock for the next group, and deliver all the breakfasts for the school. But he couldn't count. So sometimes he would have, a classroom of 15 students, other classrooms 23, 24, 25. So how did we do that? We had our job coach and our rehab counselor, me, looking at how do we get this to the point where he can get the right number of breakfasts to the right classroom. What we ended up doing was getting just a big poster board, putting squares on the poster board that counted, up to a certain number for each classroom, color coding that with a bin for each classroom. So his poster board for classroom A had, 17 squares on it, and it was in blue, and he put those in his blue bin, and then he would move on to the next one. Red might have 22 squares on it, and he had a red bin that those would go in, and then he would deliver that one. So he didn't really have to count. He just had to put a breakfast on each square and then put it in the color coordinated bin and deliver those. So he could do 4 to 6 bins at a time on his cart, make the runs to each of the classrooms and come back. It was fantastic, worked for him. He was employed there for a number of years, moved on to a stocking job, somewhere else after that. So great success story for first job for that young man. And those bins, they're going to make bins. They're going to have bins for the classrooms anyway. So why not color code them? Everyone can use the same bins if they want to. So good, quick, easy way to do it.
That is fantastic. Thank you so very much for sharing your stories. We are getting very close to being out of time. So I do want to just kind of wrap us up with a couple little closing comments. One is there will be a follow-up survey that is sent out. If you've liked what you heard today, or if you would like to hear something similar, or if you want to have any suggestions on Wednesday webinars, please let us know. You can attend future webinars with a series with the registration that is there, and I know Molly has posted that in the chat as well. And in addition to that, we are always asking on those evaluations. We look at those. We do spend time with those. The WEO Professional Development Committee spends a lot of time listening to what the system wants. So if you do have recommendations or suggestions, or would like to see Mark, Lori, and Martha again, please put that down and we'll be happy to bring them back. I do want to really quick, so just like a minute answer piece. What is one thing you'd like the audience to take away today? So we'll go Lori, Mark, and then Martha, and just one big takeaway you want everyone to keep in mind as they move forward and throughout their day and week.
I would just like to stress again that universal design and assistive technologies are not just for people with disabilities. They're for all people. We use assistive technologies every single day. Witness my glasses and the fact that I have the closed captioning going on this on this webinar, just to assist myself with following along. And that, you know, even if we don't have a solution right away, if you're not sure as an employer or an employee what needs to be done, reach out to any one of us and we will either get things rolling with our own agency or we will point you in the right direction.
Excellent. Thank you. Mark, closing thoughts. One takeaway.
That's one takeaway. Boy, that's a tough one. You know what? I guess just being mindful, you know, and I don't know the experience level of everybody on here, but as you go through your daily life, when you really kind of start thinking in terms of, geez, let's say I needed to get that off that shelf. However, I'm in a permanently sitting position. What would I do? You know, things like that. It really is just kind of common sense. Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So just coming up, you know, just as you go through your lives, realize what would I do? It just, you know, that empathy is probably the biggest part of making sure that people with disabilities get what they need to perform a function, right? Which is just basically saying, put myself in their shoes, right? What would that be like? And then just think about creative ways to solve problems and then talk to us, talk to one of us. We want to hear that. And I guess the final thing would be come visit us. 701 North Walnut Street, Springfield, Illinois. Love to hear from you. We want to have visitors. We have a demo kitchen and a smart home setup and our demo floor. We really encourage people to take field trips. So that's it.
I guess I'll close it out. Certainly, I agree with what Lori and Mark have both said. I think the more we can make our environment accessible and usable by all, I think the better off we'll all be. And you know, that creates the welcoming spirit that I think many of these laws have been trying to put into effect. But we have to hold ourselves accountable to that as well. So we all take some responsibility for that. That's how I share my job with others. And we're here as a resource, like Mark said. You know, many people have been working in this field for many years and can share that experience with you. And there are many ways to find out how to do that. So please call on us. Last, I would say there was a tool that I wanted to share with you that Chicago Lighthouse has. My Tools for Living is a new tool that we're promoting. And there is a slide there that if you want to try it out, certainly we encourage you to do that. So thank you. Thank you for making this time available to us.
Excellent. Thank you all so very much. Again, as Molly said, all the slides will be shared. This is my takeaway, is teach how to learn, not just what to learn. Sharing with our students and our customers and our clients what the how and not just the what, I think is so very important. I want to thank you all for being with us today. I encourage you to complete your evaluations and have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.